49th day after my arrival. Dear Diary, today is the day that I'll meet the other, I'm going to meet with Clan Sulpine. The translator translated their rank as Count. No idea how accurate that is. I have no idea how our noble titles worked back when they were anything other than fancy add-ons to the name. But apparently, they're about the lowest rank of high nobility, if I understand that right. Syl and I should have no issue dealing with them. They aren't very influential, even for their rank, and their territory isn't far from the palace. They apparently adopted a childhood friend of their daughter when his parents died, so they seem to be nice people. Not that it would make any less, help to reduce my nervousness. But if I say something wrong, even unintentional insults seem to be a big deal here. I mean, I rejected all those high-rank invites for some mundane reasons that I pulled out of my arse. Syl said that apparently normal for first contacts. Like, seriously, I get that some basic show of respect is important, but if humanity also was like that at one point, I'm really glad that's in the past. Imagine I would have grown up like some noble lady from these medieval movies, where every conversation is basically a battlefield. I don't think I could have handled that in my entire life. Syl told me what would be some good things to leave a friendly impression, and I practiced some lines as well. I don't know if I can keep up the act the entire time, though. Maybe I can get in a flow, like when I had to hold presentations back at school. Still, I have to get this right, if for no other reason than not to embarrass Syl. And I guess she's right. Leaving the palace every now and then probably isn't a bad idea, especially right now, since I can really use the distraction at the moment, and there are only so many language lessons I can cram into my head and achieve that. Even if the Baron is surprised by my progress, how come I have no issues talking with him? He has some grandpa vibes. Maybe that's why. But the first messenger Syl sent out to search for clues are scheduled to return soon, and I'm really scared. What if no one found anything? What if they're all, I should have a quick talk with Kyrios before I go. I hope he can calm me down. His present is almost done. I hope he likes it. Maybe I can make the next one on my own, but I doubt it. I didn't contribute much outside of the idea this time. All right, I can do this. I just have to see it as my mission to my people. If I can pull this off, Humne will already have a good impression of humanity, and things will be much easier. And we find the colony when and if and if when and if and when if in the future. Countess Espine and Count Aurelius felt equally stiff as they guided their esteemed guest into their garden. There had been so many things that they had needed to prepare that actually making their estate presentable had fallen short. It was by no means untidy. It got properly cared for every day, and if it had been a normal guest, they would have received them there without a second thought. Alas, the current one was literally as far away from a normal guest as possible, and a blunder could be catastrophic for their species' future with the humans. Sure, she had said that they merely visited to socialize for now, but bad impressions would obviously carry over. But then, through a stroke of luck, the current day had presented itself as one of the rare dry ones in the rainy season. Quickly adjusting their plans, they decided to host Lady Nadine in their garden instead. Their house was about lower average for a noble clan of their standing, but the garden was something that they were proud of. The fact that they got a chance to show it off could prove to be a large boon for the impression they left. They were truly fortunate in that regard. Occasionally there were cycles where the rain, once truly started, didn't stop at all for up to 50 days. Like the first ones, this wasn't one of those. Seeing their guests in person had been their next surprise. Having only seen her during the broadcast of the trial, they had completely underestimated how short her species was. But once again, luck was on their side. Since they sometimes had guests with children on Felpine's age, they possessed some custom-made chairs from back when she was younger. They allowed someone of a shorter height to sit at the same table while still fitting aesthetically with the rest. Espine had to thank the quick thinking of a partner who, upon seeing their guest, had almost instantly given the order to get those before she was in earshot. She herself had entirely forgotten they still had those. Reaching the small table surrounded by vast and diverse plant life, they gestured their guest to a seat. The edges of her mouth moved up as she saw the special chair. Her shoulders also, for a moment, seemed to move up and down in quick succession, and the rims of her mouth seemed to get slightly pulled inward. Not entirely sure what the expression meant. The Count and Countess merely sat down, hiding their nervousness under a perfect mask as both learned from an early age. That didn't stop them from getting a short panic attack when the chair under their guest creaked. Why was it making that noise? They hadn't used these chairs for a while. Did they corrode without them noticing it? By the first ones, please don't break, both thought desperately. Well then, let me once again thank you for having me. It is our pleasure, milady. We have prepared a few things for you. On cue, a servant pushed a tray of food next to them, filled with almost every food item they could told the humans could eat, including, they almost couldn't believe the part when they had heard it, unpurified water. The alien noblewoman gave a sign of appreciation and reached out, before stopping suddenly, the blue circles in her eyes moving to the side for a tig. The two immediately feared that they had made a mistake, but her eyes quickly went back to the usual position, and Lady Nadine took the fruit from the tray. A few moments of silence followed, while she waiting for them to initiate the conversation. Was it common for humans that the host choose the first topic? You have a pretty garden, she finally said, leaving the Count and Countess unsure whether everything was fine or if they had just committed their first blunder. It is great to hear that it is to your liking, Espen responded. You have chosen a perfect day for it. I am sorry that you have to see this part of our homeworld during the rainy season. There is a lot of beauty to be found here. It was, after all, one of the reasons why guests from off-planet were received in this region specifically, assuming their culture didn't have an entirely different sense of beauty. But since she praised their garden, they could take that gamble. It is. I actually arrived before the rain started, so I was able to see my share. My kind had never met other sapient species outside of our own until now. It is highly fascinating to observe our similarities, but there are also many ways in which our kinds developed highly divergent. There are many aspects that are still very new to me. Her Highness and I are currently testing how an exchange of our admittedly very different cultures could profit all of us. Once more, her eyes seemed to wander to the side without her head moving. On a different note, may I ask about your children? That question completely blindsided the two. Why would she ask that? Children usually only mattered in these talks to the form ties between clans. That wasn't something other species would participate in, or even could participate in, as no descendant could be conceived between them. We actually have one, a daughter, Countess Espen answered truthfully, but we're also taking care of the heir of Clan Ryla until he's old enough to inherit his title. Ah, I see. And those two, they wouldn't happen to be close to finishing their education. Okay, she definitely is trying to get somewhere with this, but what? Was she trying to prod their skills in raising their heir? Or did she just not want to get disturbed? Well, closest relative term, they still have a lot to learn, but they don't know how to behave, so don't worry, they won't bother us. Oh, I would hardly be bothered by their presence. On the contrary, if it's fine with you, I would love to meet them. Once again, more or less the opposite of what both had expected. Are you sure? Count Erelus asked. Lasting friendships bridge generations, do they not? Well, that I do, Erelus agreed. Very well then, I shall have them called momentarily. Thank you. But there is no need. They heard me. The two grew quiet. In fact, the entire garden did, all servants included. The alien noblewoman took a sip of her water before breaking the silence. Don't you two wish to join us? She asked in a louder voice than before. I doubt the stone is very comfortable. Staring in disbelief, the two watched their daughter and their ward slowly stand up from behind the balustrade of the elevated walkway. Clearly ashamed, Philippine guided her adopted brother to the table, unable to scold them in front of their guest who had somehow known that they were there from the start. Erelus ordered for the 2 more chairs to be brought. Lady Nadine didn't appear to be angry, at least, so the situation wasn't unsalvageable. Hello, my lady, Philippine stammered, while Raccoon couldn't get a word out. Lady Nadine, Espen quickly took over. This is our daughter, Philippine, and the heir to Clan Rayla, Raccoon. A pleasure to meet you too, she addressed them. So the 2 of you are learning to take over your respective titles. Yes, my lady, the daughter answered. Raccoon remained silent. Then say, would you like to assist Her Highness at the Star Palace for a while? I heard that she will soon start taking adolescents under her tutelage at frequent intervals to allow them to gather some practical experience. Once more, silence. None of the 4 said anything. None of the 4 knew what they could say to this. Direct tutelage under the princess. This has, of course, nothing to do with me, Lady Nadine continued. I'm just thinking aloud that someone who knew about this prior might have a good chance of getting the first spots. This is too good to be true. They were mere counts. How could they possibly imagine a chance like this for their daughter? But, Raccoon finally found his voice. My eyes. I noticed, the alien noblewoman said to everyone's surprise. They'd expected her to lose interest in him as soon as she found out. Just like all the ducal clans did, which was why they, mere counts, had been able to adopt him in the first place. The Dukes consider Clan Ryla more or less done for and were ready to snatch up the remains. But she didn't seem to care. I won't pretend it doesn't matter. It's obviously a big deal. But I also know that there have been many humans in the past with similar situations to your own. And it couldn't stop them, because it can only do that if you allow it. If you put your mind to it, I have no doubts that you can achieve great things, both for yourself and for your clan, as long as you don't give up. They had lost count of how often they had been shocked by this very short time frame. The entirety of this day hadn't played out even closely to their expectations. After that, they somehow managed to resume normal talks, with Philippine and Raccoon mostly listening. That, of course, didn't mean the two wouldn't get to hear some things later on. At one point, Count Erelus brought up a rumor he had heard from the capital, and Lady Nadine left shortly after. Finishing her work for the day, Silkvarni stood up from her desk. It was still a bit tedious to only have 2 of the 4 arms available, but it was doable now that things had calmed down, and the doctor finally allowed her to leave her bed again. The much bigger pain had been the time she hadn't been able to work today, which had been almost all of the day, because her expected molting had finally happened. Just molting under normal circumstances was already incredibly annoying. It was a long and tedious process, gradually wiping off the remains of the outer shell as they slowly turned into a gooey sludge. As she had servants to help her with it, she didn't even want to imagine how it was for those who had to do it alone. But if molting under normal circumstances was annoying, molting under medical supervision, because 2 of your 4 arms were in splints, with the servants needed to come up with creative ways to clean out under said splints, while she was having to be careful to not further injure said arms, was really annoying. But at least it was done now, and she could no longer have the cavity in her side that she needed to hide, and her arms would hopefully heal with the next molting. It was, however, not yet time to retreat into her private quarters, as there were at least 2 more things today that required her attention. One was to hear out Nadine about her day. The other was to check up on the doctor, which she promptly decided to do first. It was the same standardized test that she was by now used to, plus the normal post-molting check. "It seems as though your new shell has hardened properly, Your Highness," the doctor concluded once she was done, "and your other results continue to improve as well." "Thank you, Doctor. Is that all?" Silkvarni realized that she sounded a bit more dismissive than intended. Maybe it was because of all the repetitive tests were a little more than time-consuming routines by now. The doctor, however, seemed to not agree with the assessment. "Your Highness, with all due respect, you do realize how insanely lucky you were with this, right? Even if we assumed that Nadine and I would be able to help you as quickly as we could find in every scenario, this could have easily ended in countless other ways, all much worse than 2 broken arms and an impressively short period of recovery, right? I did by no means intend to sound ungrateful, Doctor. You and Nadine are the sole reason I'm alive today, and that is something I won't forget. Your words humble me, Your Highness, but that is not what I was trying to get." "So," a shout from Familiar interrupted the doctor, although the 2 of them rarely heard the voice being this loud. The doctor stood up, opened a freshly repaired door, and waved to the small alien who entered the office shortly after. "Ah, there you are. That I am," Silkvarni affirmed. "How did your visit go?" "Good, I guess, but there's something else we need to talk about first. They apparently heard a rumor that 2.5 weeks ago, a large number of warships flew off from the northern harbor into space." The princess cocked her head. 2.5 what? "A couple days, not important. Do you have any ideas why they might be the case?" Was Nadine concerned by this rumor? Well, if her home was like she had described, it was understandable. Sudden troop movements could imply a lot of things if you lacked context. Silkvarni, unfortunately, almost never interacted with their fleets as the military didn't fall under her authority, so she herself didn't know why they were doing that. "I'm sure there is nothing to worry about. I don't have much to do with our military, but I can think of 3 possible reasons, depending on what large number means. Option 1 would be that they were switching places with the ones on the flotillas guarding the secure routes, so the latter can get their maintenance done. Option 2 would be that they are being swapped with the ships from the main fleet who are guarding our orbit." "Okay, and just in case, what if large number refers to a really large number?" "Well, that would be option 3. The main fleet got ordered to move out, and they are temporarily taking over the position in orbit. But that would only happen if in case of a large-scale military operation. And since such a thing would most certainly be done in cooperation with other Alliance members, that is something that I would have heard of. The only other way would be something so urgent and important that they couldn't wait for an answer. But we're not at war anymore, so I have no idea what that would be. The Karosha never attacked us in that manner." Nadine flinched at the mention of the insectoids, and Sagvani cursed herself for bringing them up. Nadine's trauma had gotten better, but it hadn't vanished. Shortly after, though, the alien girl's eyes narrowed, and she got quiet for a while. Then she turned to the door. "I see. But to be sure, let me check something really quick. Where are you going?" "The dungeon. Call it a hunch. But I have a really bad feeling about this." End of chapter. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manathayria, 050, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.